Welcome to the Mental Health Multiverse.
We're your hosts, HB and LB. If you're also on a healing journey and enjoy pop culture, stick around. Hi friends, LB here. So since the recording of this episode, the iconic James Earl Jones has passed away.
We are so heartbroken to hear about his passing. May he live on in the characters we love so dearly, such as the legendary Mufasa and the villain of all villains, Darth Vader. We dedicate our Scar episode to his memory.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of MHM, the podcast. We are so excited about this episode because we are talking about Scar from The Lion King, who, in my opinion, has the best villain song in Disney history. But more importantly, we have two very fun and special guests that I'm so excited to have on the episode with us today. So without further ado, welcome Courtney and Emmy. Hello.
Yay!
Hi, thank you.
Hello. Welcome to Mental Health Multiverse to the both of you. As we said before we started recording, basically when LB and I were deciding who we were going to have on for guests, basically Courtney was the first person I thought of and Emmy was the first person LB thought of, and we both thought of you for this Scar episode. It was so serendipitous. We were both like, I have the perfect person for Scar. And then we're like, I guess we'll just have to have them both on. This is very exciting. So Courtney Bree is my invitee. I guess I will claim Courtney as my invitee. AKA Coco Bree, known as Coco Bree Cosplay on Instagram, is an actress, editor, and cosplayer, a Baylor grad who is now based in LA with 12 years of experience in the film industry in various positions. Her love for creativity extends to social media, where she shares her adventures and digital creations. She also teaches editing to hundreds of students online. So talented. I just have to say, my mind is blown, and you've grown so much in the past, like, I don't know, 4 years, I would say.
Yeah, 4 years. Yeah. I think I started posting my cosplays and stuff in 2020, and now got this big community over there. So
that's so exciting.
Great.
Cool. Oh my gosh. Next time I'm in LA, we need to meet in person. That would be so
for real. Please call me, literally.
Okay, I will, because yes, Courtney is one of the people that I have not met in person ever. And in fact, this is our first time like speaking to each other face to face. We are friends online and we message each other and are very supportive of each other online. But it's so cool to have you on and actually be talking to you about this. And one of the reasons that I invited Courtney on specifically is because Courtney has an in-depth analysis, and we'll get to this later. I'll let you talk about this later, but Courtney has an in-depth analysis of Scar as a character and Scar's backstory, so we are going to ask you about that later. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Ooh, that's so exciting. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's really nice to meet you, Courtney. And it's funny you mentioned that, Heather, because my invitee, Emmy, very similar in terms of we've met online, have been online friends, have yet to meet in person. Emmy is at Bloom with Emmy on Instagram, and very similarly grew over the last 4 years, has this amazing, great community to support survivors of abuse. And I'll just get into your nice bio that you wrote for us. So Emmy, aka Blooming with Emmy, is a certified trauma-informed coach who specializes in helping clients create thriving lives and relationships after trauma. She runs the Instagram platform at Bloom with Emmy and offers one-on-one coaching, courses, and other resources for post-traumatic growth. She is based in Oregon, but sees clients virtually all over the world. And Lion King was one of her things, because she was so nice to have me on her podcast, Heal in Harmony, where we got to break down some Taylor Swift songs. A song once, I don't remember now, one song, but we were talking about other songs that were very similar. Anyway, and I was like, I have to have you on Mental Health Multiverse. And she was like, well, I really like Scar and Lion King. And I was like, well, at the time we were talking about Disney princesses and Pixar. And I was like, I think we're going to get to it eventually. And then now here we are talking about Disney villains. And now here we are on this episode. So yay. Hi, Emmy.
Welcome.
Hey, hi. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here.
Yay, 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 yay.
Before we start asking you all of the questions that we have prepared to ask you, I am going to do a little brief synopsis of Lion King, and I'm going to keep it brief because we are focusing on the villain. So, like, who cares about the plot, right? We'll talk more about the actual plot throughout the course of this episode. And also, you're both lucky because normally we ask the guests to do the synopsis, but to keep this short and sweet, I'm going to do it. Okay, so we're not putting you on the spot. It'll just be me. Basically, The Lion King is the story of Hamlet, only made with lions. And it is about a brother who is very jealous of the king, of his brother who is the king, and he decides that he wants to kill his brother and take over the kingdom. The only problem is that his brother has a son who is technically next in line for the throne. So he also has to figure out how to get rid of and kill the son, who is Simba. So Mufasa is dad, Scar is brother, and son is Simba. And Scar comes up with this plan of starting a stampede that will kill the both of them. But unfortunately, his plan gets kind of thwarted and Mufasa saves Simba. However, Mufasa nearly saves himself, but in a very iconic scene of Mufasa hanging from the rock and Scar kind of gripping into his claws and saying, long live the king, and then throws him off the edge of the cliff into the stampede. And then Mufasa is dead. Spoilers if you haven't seen Lion King. Anyway.
You've only had 20, 30 years?
Oh my God. It is 30 years. That's wild.
Oh my gosh. I saw it in theaters. My age.
Oh my gosh. I don't know if I saw it in theaters. We'll talk about that too. I know that I had the movie memorized, but I think it's just from owning the VHS. But I'll ask my mom. I probably did. But yeah, so Scar kind of convinces Simba that it was his fault that his dad died, and Simba runs away and is raised by these two beautiful queer characters that are Timon and Pumbaa.
Yes, we love them.
We love Timon and Pumbaa. And then Nala finds him in the woods when he's an adult, and Scar has kind of in the woods, in the jungle. I don't know why I said the woods. The jungle. Finds him in the jungle in the middle of nowhere. I think that's where my brain was. And Scar has kind of like ruined the kingdom. There's no food, there's no water. Everybody had all of the other animals, their like prey has kind of left. And so Nala's out hunting far, far away. And she finds Simba and is like, what are you doing here? You should come back. Everybody thinks you're dead. But Simba has so much shame about being the reason that his father died that he doesn't want to go back. But Nala kind of convinces him because Scar has run the kingdom into the ground. And then Simba goes back and fights Scar, and he chooses not to kill Scar because he thinks he should have a similar fate to what he had. And he tells Scar to just like run away and never return. But then the hyenas eat him. So yeah, that's the plot of The Lion King.
And that's Disney.
Truly so traumatic. Yeah.
It is actually very dark. But Courtney, you mentioned you saw this in theaters. Do you like remember that experience very well?
No, not at all. But my mom told me we went.
There we go.
I definitely remember from the VHSs. Like I watched it, every day until I wore it out. But it's still my favorite, I think, of the Disney movies. Like you said earlier, Scar's song, Be Prepared, is like, it needs its own awards.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
All the awards.
Yes.
When that song wasn't in the live action version that they did, I was so mad.
I know.
I was so angry. I was like, you can't get rid of the most iconic villain song that exists and underscore a scene with the music from it. Like that, no. Mm-mm.
Yeah. I'm also curious about this new Mufasa movie that's coming out later this year, because having just watched the animated movie, it canonically doesn't make sense if we want to get like into the lore. But yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting. But anyway, so for people who didn't know or may not remember, this movie came out in June of 1994. I was not yet born, but my personal experience with the movie is definitely just watching it on VHS over and over and over again. I have this like very visceral memory too of like pretending to be a lion and prowling around on my parents' bed and like roaring at them. If that gives you any clue into what kind of child I was. Yeah, I just have always really liked this movie. It's one of those where coming into this episode, I'm like, I don't know what like mental health, wellness, personal development things we can take away from this because it's just I don't it's hard to watch the movie from that lens, but I think over the course of our conversation we can find some things. So yeah, I'm really excited to talk about it. What about you, Emmy? What are some of your personal experiences with the movie?
Yeah, I was born in 95, so I think I had a similar experience to y'all who have spoken so far, just watching it on VHS over and over. And then I was a figure skater when I was a kid and a teenager, and my first ice show, which was like the yearly like exhibition thing where we would perform like from a musical or whatever, and like literally dress up like the characters and stuff. So I was like 7 for the first one and did the Lion King, and then also my last ice show, we did the Lion King, and I was like a soloist and was Nala, so
Ah,
that was pretty
ooh,
cool. She has a song
cool.
in this, like it must have been in the Broadway musical, I'm guessing, because she doesn't have one in the movie, the animated movie, but yeah, so love the Lion King. Yeah, and I felt similarly about like how are we going to explore this from a mental health perspective, but I've been doing some research all day because I am like trying to prepare, so I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yay. So one of the I guess what's the word I'm looking for? One of the quote unquote markers of like a good villain is their background and motivation, right? And when I say a good villain, typically it's one that like I don't want to say people are rooting for, but one that's like well written, one that feels believable, blah 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 blah. So, since Heather kind of teased that Courtney has this like really amazing in-depth analysis of Scar's history and background, I would love if you could kind of like share that, and that's how we kind of set the foundation for today's episode.
Okay, cool. Maybe teased a little bit too hard to the sun. I have this series that I did where I'm talking about like the origin stories of different characters. And so I did some research on Scar's backstory because we don't see it in the Lion King movie. It's just they're already adults. And so apparently there was a book that was written after the movie came out called A Tale of Two Brothers. And in the book, Scar is his name is Taka, which in Swahili means rubbish or trash. So already
Oh,
he's dealing with, I know, like, can you imagine being called dirt? Like, that just seems like, so
mm.
he's already given a hard card of hands to play with. So he starts off named Taka, and he's the son of King Ahadi. And Mufasa is still his brother in the book, and Mufasa is the heir of the throne. Of course, Scar is jealous. He wants the throne, and to get his father's attention, he tries to set Mufasa up because at this watering hole, there was a drought, and there was a watering hole that a water buffalo named Boma, if I can remember correctly, was in charge of. And so he wanted to make it to where Mufasa would either get embarrassed or killed by going to this water hole and like begging for water for the pride. And it didn't go as planned. Mufasa goes down there, and while he's negotiating with Boma, these other three buffaloes come and basically jump Scar as he's watching the event. And they say that's how he got his scar. And
Hmm.
then they said that what else happened? The reason he named himself Scar later on was to remember the mistake that he made. So that's one of the two main stories that I've read about. The other one is from The Lion Guard. I don't know if y'all watched that one. It was like a movie that came out after The Lion King 2. It was good. It was cute. I think actually, was it a movie or a show? It might have been
It's
a
a
show. It was
show.
like on. Okay.
It's a show. Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't watch it until I was doing like the research for it, and it was so cute. But basically, in that one, Scar is named Ascari, and he's a descendant of the Ascari tribe. And there was this roar of the elders that was to like protect the pride. And there was another lion that came and was trying to take over the pride and to protect the lions, Scar was trying to, I guess, fight the lion that we don't know the name. I don't think I know his name. But long story short, a snake comes out. You know, Disney comes up with like all the animals, they throw in all the different characters. So a snake comes out of nowhere and attacks Scar, and he gets a cut on his eye. Scar ends up killing the other lion. And spoiler alert for anyone who wanted to watch The Lion Guard, but he ends up killing the other lion, and they say that that's how he got his scar that way. So I don't really know which way is the correct version, but they both come from him trying to protect the other lions, but also this need of wanting, or this feeling of wanting to be the king. He wants to be the next heir, and he wants to get rid of Mufasa, and just adversity stands in his way every time.
Yeah, that definitely tracks as far as like his motivation in the original animated movie. He just seems very power hungry. I can tell. There also seems to be, you know, resentment, and he's very jaded and manipulative. And rewatching it, focusing specifically on Scar, the thought that just kept coming up for me was like, oh, you just have this deep desire to feel seen and heard and acknowledged, even because, like you said, his parents named him Dirt. Do you know what Mufasa stands for? Does that mean?
I don't know.
Yes, it means king or ruler. I looked this up today too. Yeah.
Okay, so literally the parents named their children King and Dirt. So, you know, that's already going to set him up with a complex. That's really interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but I agree with you, Marissa. Like in the song Be Prepared, he literally says he'll be respected, saluted, and seen for the wonder I am. And obviously I've sang that song and listened to it many, many, many times throughout my life. And watching the movie through this lens this time made me sort of realize, like, I think that being left behind and unwanted and unseen can be an origin story for a lot of villains. Like he just, and of course, like his need comes from a place of like, he's conceited and he wants that attention. He wants to be respected. But what it seems like is that wound started somewhere a long time ago, right? And it became what is now Scar, right?
Yeah.
Like he wasn't just out the womb like, hate my brother, want to kill him, you know?
Yeah. It's interesting too, because I was looking some things up, and a lot of the things I was seeing describes Scar as like very narcissistic, but I would argue that it's more that he's insecure. Like, yeah, he thinks very highly of himself, but there's this like need to prove himself.
Yeah, I feel like it's really interesting to say like, oh, people, you know, would say Scar is a narcissist, but he's actually really insecure. I think that's the point, or like that's sort of the origin story of, you know, some people with more of a narcissistic personality is like a deep rooted sense of shame and unworthiness of like, you know, I was never good enough. I never belonged in my family. No one paid attention to me. No one loved me. I'm not going to process that. I'm not going to heal that. Which, you know, if you're a kid, how could you know how to do that? But then as you get older, you're like, you kind of learn this coping mechanism of I'm going to project this facade of I'm better than everyone and sort of project all my shame onto others, and use them, like he uses like the hyenas and all that, and manipulates Simba and stuff and sees everyone below him. It's like all coming from a really false
sense of confidence,
sense of self. Yeah, exactly.
For sure. Thank you. Heather and I talk about our siblings a lot on this podcast, and here we go again, mainly because a lot of Scar's, you know, motivation and I guess trauma is from his relationship with Mufasa. I can kind of relate to this in that my brother was definitely the golden child. I'm the eldest, but I was not, you know, like I'm not the heir to anything, but my brother was definitely the golden child, and I was the one like put down a lot, not given the same freedom or opportunities, and blah 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 blah. And for a long time I did act like Scar. I had this need to put others down to make myself feel better. And we talked about this in another episode, but that was a lot of like my middle school and high school years, and I regret a lot of that. And again, like we said in our recap opening episode, relating to this experience does not outright make you a villain, and there's always like room for growth and change and blah 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 blah. But it definitely took a lot of awareness and work to kind of, I guess, get away from that track. And I think the thing that helped me specifically was that I learned very quickly it was not sustainable. Like, it was not a sustainable or grounded way to have relationships and to move through life. So I guess my next question for you both is like, one of the things people love, I specifically love in seeing in villains, is like a redemption story. Obviously, Scar does not get redeemed by the end of this, but I'm curious, like, what things do you think he could have done, or how things could have been differently for him to have had that redemption arc, I guess. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, I think at the end when he has that moment with Simba, when Simba is like pointing out everything that he's done and he blames the hyenas, I feel like had he taken a little bit of responsibility for everything that happened, that might have been a way for us to see a little bit of the redemption happen in the movie. But he just throws the hyenas under the bus and they're sitting there like, wait, what are we? So.
And then they
Yeah,
decide
I
to
think
take
that's like-
revenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I don't know if Disney's, probably evolved a bit with like how they're, handling villains or whatever. Because this one, it just seems like it's so like just in every way like Scar equal evil, like, and so
Mhm.
what deserves and dies. It's like very punitive, which I'm like, okay, I get it. Yeah, I think to answer this question, there's like. I don't know much about this guy's family life. Like, I was kind of doing some research today online, and like those books, Courtney, that you shared, it seems like, it goes way back to like his family system that, he needed maybe some outside intervention of someone else in the community coming in and being like, hey, why do you treat your second son like he literally doesn't matter? And to sort of find like chosen family outside of his family, and maybe almost had a Simba type arc of getting not excommunicated, but voluntarily leaving, going away and finding community elsewhere. I think, could have made things different. But then, yeah, by the time he is, in The Lion King, it's like, it doesn't really seem like my dude here has any sort of will or desire to improve in any way. Like, it's all he wants to do is dominate, control, undermine, blame everyone else. So I don't, personally see a lot of hope with that. But.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, he definitely seems very one track minded on like, I just want the throne and I'll do whatever it takes to get there, even if that means putting my family, my brother and my nephew in harm's way to get there. Yeah.
And then the entire community, once he is king, he, ruins it and won't change, or, so it's like that kind of stubbornness and rigidity of like, nope, I'm not going to change for you. Like, it's only my way, and really ruining things for everyone.
Yeah, 100%. When Heather was going through the synopsis, I had the thought of like, yeah, the way the environment changes and the lands die and there's no food, or it's not thriving in the same way that it was when Mufasa was king, is like a direct reflection of how Scar's motivation for being a leader and the way that he's leading is not good.
Yeah.
Right. It's not inclusive. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I was going to just say, since he is seemingly all bad, I wonder what it is that we all find so attractive about him. He seems to be a lot of people's favorite character, And I'm like, is it what we see in him? Is that also what the hyena saw in him to like follow him? I just don't know what quality.
Yeah.
Such a good question. Yeah, I think like I saw an article today that it was like Scar is basically like a warning sign of like charismatic leaders, and I try really hard to stay away from language and like things like psychopath, sociopath, like and I get it. Some people really reclaim those things. Some people think it's totally inappropriate to mention them at all. But I think what Disney's kind of going for here is like dangerous people, abusive people can be very smooth and charismatic and intelligent and funny and, come across like that. And then you give them like, Simba believes him. He's naive and he's trusting and he believes him. And, Scar, what does he do with that information? So I think that's kind of like, it's the song, very good song. And he's got a certain like swagger and charisma to him. But yeah, it was interesting. I would not say that I like Scar. I really like The Lion King. I really like Simba. I loved Timon and Pumbaa, right? I was not coming to this episode with like, I like Scar a lot. I just like the movie. But yeah, he's got a certain swag for sure.
No, that's a really good point. Definitely the charisma, or as the children say these days, the Riz. Scar has the Riz. But then I'm curious too how. So Emmy, you mentioned, part of what could possibly have redeemed him was him leaving the Pride Lands, knowing what his place, accepting what his place is, and either starting his own pride or finding his own community and building a life that he actually enjoys. But in the second movie, which I absolutely love and is one of my favorite Disney sequels, kind of has another pride, right? Like Kazira and Kovu is like his son or something? Question mark?
I thought he died in The Lion King when the hyenas ate him. I didn't see the second one, or I haven't seen it in a long time.
But there's
He
something
is in the second one too, somehow.
Oh.
I don't know how, now that you bring that up, I
right?
never put two and two together.
I don't know if he's
It's because Disney sequels don't make sense, and I'll just leave it at that. I'm
they
not
really
a fan
don't.
of Disney sequels.
Well, I don't know too if it's so much that like maybe Kovu isn't. For people who have seen the sequel, let me know. Maybe it's not that Scar is Kovu's dad, but I think what's her name? Zira? Whatever the mom's name is. Yeah, she's like a huge Scar fan. It's kind of like a cult almost, I think.
I just looked it up, and Kovu's parents are Uhasiri and Furaha, but this might be from, I don't know. Anyway, it says that Kovu's father is never explicitly identified. It gives Scar energy, Scar vibes.
Yeah, well,
according to
Kovu gets a Scar, and
bastard.
that's like the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Kovu's a bastard. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. It's so brutal, but it's so good. It's so good.
Yes.
Anyway, I lost my train of thought. But anyway.
Okay, can I say something really quick?
Yes.
For anyone who has been watching House of the Dragon, I won't do spoilers or anything, but Daemon, the character, kind of Scar-ish, but a lot more redeemable, a lot more willing to take accountability and grow. But anyway,
it only took him like 3 seasons, but yes, yeah, we love that for him.
I just looked this up. It said, due to his death in The Lion King, Scar's appearance and presence in the sequel, The Lion King 2: Simba's Pride, is limited, whatever that means. Upon and despite Scar's demise, a rivaling pride of lions known as the Outsiders decide to remain loyal to him, led by his most devoted follower, Zira. So apparently he is in it, but he does die in Lion King, so it's both.
So at what point does he have the time to start a cult while he's like wallowing and formulating ways to off his brother and nephew?
I think what it's alluding to is that he had followers who supported him in the Pride when he was king. Maybe.
Oh, when the lands were ruined and
for sure.
I think that's food. For sure. Yeah. I mean, I can't say that wouldn't happen in real life, so that makes sense.
We cannot say that. I wanted to piggyback off something Emmy said a little bit ago about Scar kind of excommunicating himself for a redemption arc, to Scar to excommunicate himself and sort of found family. Isn't that what he kind of did with the hyenas? Even though, because he is a manipulative person, he decided to become their leader. So I think there's something to explore there about the difference between Simba being excommunicated and choosing to be a good person versus Scar, who essentially was also excommunicated but decided to like become a leader of people who were smaller and weaker than him, you know?
Yeah, I think the big difference there is like community versus, again, what's the word I'm looking for? I was gonna say leadership, but that's like too positive a note. Like he is
Domination,
there we go.
authoritarianism.
Thank
Yeah.
you. He is like yeah, he's
Dictatorship.
dominating these hyenas versus Simba looking for connection and community and friendship.
Yeah.
Right, but Simba had also just gone through something incredibly traumatic, so he could have gone the path of, I am a lion, I could eat these people, you know?
Yeah, that's true too.
Totally.
So it's like,
He was also a child.
He was a lot younger. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
like Scar was way settled into those neural pathways or whatever.
Mhm. He has this certain narrative set in his brain, and that's
Who he is. Yeah.
who he is. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I feel like we're all like trying really hard to be generous. I am, at least. like it seems like.
what do
like,
you
with
really
Scar.
want to say?
Yeah.
What do you really want to say? I want to hear
Say
it.
what you feel.
I mean, I'm
You're
saying
true.
what I feel. I'm just trying to put that positive spin on it.
You don't have to.
But,
He's a villain. He's
Yeah.
like he murdered his brother and tried to
Right.
murder his nephew. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
that's not
Not
really a
great.
good, yeah, not
Not good.
great. Not great. And I never really thought, like, we've gone through these lists in our episodes of like who is the most evil Disney villain, right? Who is the most, and I don't think Scar has been on any of those lists, has he? Not yet, at least.
I don't think we've talked about him yet because I think top of our list is definitely Frollo because genocide is bad. Mother Gothel's been up there, De La Cruz because he literally murdered someone for music. But I don't think we've had the opportunity to talk about Scar, and I would definitely say Scar is for sure up there.
Yeah.
He's definitely cold-blooded. Like he was able to look into his brother's face and still throw him off the cliff. They're not very well. I cry at everything, but there are not many movies that the masses, Disney movies that everyone cries during. And I think so many people still in their 30s cry watching that scene.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was watching it today and I was getting emotional. I was like, I know what's happening. I know.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so sad.
Yeah.
It's very sad. But he's just straight up evil. I guess my last question for you all is if over the course of our conversation there have been any takeaways, or if you have any bits of encouragement for anyone who's like, dang, I actually kind of like relate to what Scar's going through and I feel the same way, and maybe they're seeing a little bit of themselves in him or anything like that.
Yeah, I think if you're courageous enough to admit that you're, willing to reach for power at the expense of other people, and you don't really feel remorse for your actions and stuff like that. Like if you're ready to admit that, kudos to you. That's amazing. So impressive. So many people don't do that. So yeah, like getting support for that, I think like through therapy and looking for someone who has some experience with either like cluster B personality disorders, or if you want to get more specific with narcissism or antisocial personality disorder, because I know there's definitely a huge stigma with personality disorders that I am not free from, but there's definitely some people out there that specialize in that and are willing and ready to help if you want to find a way to manage that so you can have like really good relationships and work through the shame and all that stuff that could be driving it too, for sure.
Yeah, and I think taking, like, if you've experienced childhood trauma, then we can empathize with the fact that it's hard to work past that. But if you recognize that there is a problem, then maybe seeking help, like Emmy said, step one is actually recognizing the flaw and understanding that there are other ways. You don't have to cave into being just like a bad person. But yeah.
I also think that there's something to be said, like you don't have to be full throttle evil to relate to Scar, like you can have moments. Like there was a moment when I was watching where I was sort of like relating to the desire to be seen and heard, and not having that experience making me angry. And I think you're allowed to acknowledge that too, and acknowledge that anger and be like, yeah, I'm allowed to be mad that these people don't see me. I'm allowed to be mad that this community of people doesn't accept me. I'm allowed to be jealous of what this person has. I don't have to kill them in order to get what they have. And quite often, as we have talked about in previous episodes, especially when we talked about Tinkerbell and any other episode where we've touched on jealousy, what is this desire for something else teaching you about yourself? Like, why do you want that so badly? Like, why is this something you want so badly that it is making you behave in a different way than what you would traditionally behave in, right? Like, what is it teaching you about what you want? And jealousy aside, like the not being seen, not being heard, it's okay to express your needs to the people who are not giving you that. But as we kind of discussed earlier, it's also okay to remove yourself from the situations where the people are not seeing you or hearing you. And you might become the villain in someone else's story when you remove yourself from their life. They might say, dang, this person left me. And you'd be like, well, you weren't seeing and hearing me. And you're just, it's two heads butting together. You're each the villain in the other person's story in that case.
Yeah. No, I really like that you brought that up, because one of the harder parts of, I think, for me anyway, as far as healing, is there are people who knew me at my worst, and I can't change that, and I can't prove to them that I've changed, and there's a lot of shame around that, and sometimes it's hard to accept that, but at the end of the day, we have to accept, in order to move on, really, that we can't control other people's perceptions of us. And sometimes we are the bad guy in someone's story, and that's how we're seen. But like Emmy, what you said, as far as like Scar redeeming himself, is taking accountability, apologizing, recognizing that the way he has and is behaving is not okay or acceptable, and trying really hard to change. Because yeah, there were a lot of moments in my childhood with my brother where I would put him down to make myself feel better in order to gain some kind of approval from my parents, who were emotionally absent. And my mom was, we've talked about this on the episode before, but like really abusive towards me, but not necessarily to my brother. There were definitely a lot of Scar moments for me where I would, have my little hyenas to make my brother feel bad about himself, or try and like show my family that I was the good one, Anyway, but just like we've said in a couple of different episodes so far, like, just because you relate doesn't mean you're automatically the villain, doesn't mean you're automatically evil. It just means there are opportunities for growth and change.
Yeah. And also, like, what am I trying to say before I sound like I'm completely negating everything you said? Because I don't mean that. What I want to say is also that it's okay if you relate to it and there's not opportunity for growth and change too. I think like there's moments of relating to this where you're allowed to sit and be angry as well. You don't have to act on that anger by being cruel, but you can sit and be like, yeah, I'm mad about my treatment here, Yeah.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add, like, the situation you're describing with your brother, Marissa, it's like, I feel like obligated to just acknowledge that you were a kid or maybe a teenager, but still, in that developmental stage where, like, what else were you gonna do? Like, and not to say it's okay or you shouldn't feel bad. Like, obviously, it's healthy to feel like guilt for those things, but yeah, like, it's different than being like a full-grown adult. Scar, trying to kill his brother and nephew because of jealousy. So I just wanted to offer you a little grace there after your vulnerable share.
Oh, thanks, Fred. I appreciate that.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, kids are shitty sometimes.
Yeah.
Myself included.
Honestly.
Yeah.
And also, like we've talked about before too, is like you were doing your best with what you had right there in front of you. And like, I don't think Scar was ever doing his best at anything in the movie. Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just think that's really important. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to share specifically surrounding Scar as a villain? What makes him a good villain? What makes him an enticing villain? Anything about his design that might be like, yes, this makes a good villain also, you know? Yeah.
Yes, I feel like he's so hateable that it like makes you feel good about yourself when you relate to the hero, which I think is so common, right? But you're like, oh, well, like I'm like Simba, you know, like it is tragic that
I am
Mufasa
a
died,
lion.
obviously. Yeah, or you relate to Timon and Pumbaa, and you're like so fun, upbeat, positive, like it like gives you like almost a scapegoat in movie form of someone to see as the bad guy, which, you know, I think it's the nature of children's movies a lot of the time, or especially like back in the day, there isn't a whole lot of nuance. So yeah, I feel like they really painted him with that broad stroke to give everyone a focal point to channel their hatred, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. Even the way the animators designed him with the green eyes, like I think green for envy, you know.
Yeah,
I think that
he's
was
so good.
intentional. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
very scary looking.
Yeah. Well, and I think another thing, and we don't have to get into this analysis because we will have talked about it on our What Makes a Villain episode, but a lot of villains are animated as othered, and Scar really has no similarities to the other lions, right? He's got a dark mane and they all have a red mane. He's animated with darker fur and they all have light gold fur, right? And so not only is it his personality that he is that makes him othered, but it's also his looks, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just to add to that, I saw on a website today, I didn't think of this myself, but someone said like he's like thin and kind of weak physically, but very intelligent, but it like represents like this hunger he has physically, but also for power. It's interesting versus like
Ooh,
Mufasa and
Yeah.
Simba are like, you know, muscular and like they
Yeah.
got what they need. They have their needs met, yeah.
And that's really interesting too, because he's still living in their lands. It's not like he is on his own, but he has just gone down this path of being so jaded and so resentful that it could be he is scrounging for his own scraps because he doesn't want anything to do with the pride. It's an interesting note.
Mhm.
I hadn't thought of that.
Right, or he is like there's some part in it apparently where he says he has shallow gene pool or something. Like talks about like in the movie
Oh,
he
yeah,
mentions
yeah, yeah.
he has the bad genes or something. And so it's like that, you know, potentially could be another factor if you grow up with this linebacker, older brother, star of the football team, and you're this scrawny, smart kid that's got a lot of anger issues and resentment towards that, and you can never get, you know, built no matter how hard you try, perhaps, or something like that could definitely make you really want to kill your brother, like potentially, you know, with that kind of pathology or whatever personality style.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. That makes sense. That was all my notes. Heather, do you have anything else before we wrap up?
I have a bunch of stuff.
Oh,
Yeah.
go off then. Go for it.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of like being enticing and stuff, I loved all the characters of this movie, but I remember my friends and I would always reenact the scene with the hyenas when they're like being dumb together and they're like Mufasa, 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 Mufasa. Like that moment, like I think one thing that is enticing about the bad, and I'm putting that in quotes, like the bad guys, is that they are also sometimes the comedic relief, which Emmy kind of alluded to earlier a little bit. And Scar is like really funny. Like when Simba asks him, like when I'm king, what'll that make you? And he's like, a monkey's uncle. Like it's very sarcastic. It's very, and that kind of humor, I think, is enticing in a way that's sort of like, I want to quote this. I might not know what it means, but I want to quote this. I want to pretend to be this. And I think as cosplayers, to go back to what Courtney asked at the very beginning of the episode, having that sort of like quip, not only is it a cool design, not only is this person sarcastic or this character sarcastic, and they stand out in such a specific way, and cosplayers, we obviously like to stand out. So I would say I think that's why a lot of people like Scar would be for that particular reason. But yeah, I just like I had like a flashback vivid memory when I was watching it of like literally watching this movie in my friend's basement when we were like 5 years old and pretending to be the hyenas and just quoting that moment of the movie over and over again, probably to the point where our parents hated us. Yeah, and the villains are also clever, which Emmy just put it in the chat. So they're so clever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so true. That's probably why I've cosplayed him more than any of the other characters, because he is funny. And I think it's interesting that he still has to kind of operate under the normal uncle role, even though we know he has this plot to kill Mufasa, because there's that moment where he's talking to Simba and Simba is just being a kid, annoying him, and he's like, oh goody, like he's like, one day I'm gonna be the king, and Scar is like, oh good, like, you know, he's still trying to operate under that space of like an uncle with like an annoying nephew, but we know that he still has this like murderous plan brewing. It's very interesting.
Yeah. A lot of brutal death. Yeah, another thing I thought of was like when I was in high school, I was like super miserable because I was in an abusive relationship, and the guy I was in a relationship with was very Scar-like, I'll say that. Like in and out of jail, addicted to substances, exiled from school, or like he kicked out of school, whatever. Yeah, y'all know what that means. And so in order for him to have any semblance of self, it was a lot of like hating everyone else. And then I trying to somehow preserve this relationship, a lot of like directing my anger towards like the popular crowd or the cool kids, you know, and seeing myself as this like edgy, unique person for being with him because he really was not accepted. And so yeah, I can kind of see that with the Scar thing too. Is it like sometimes it feels good to like hate on Mufasa type thing. Like, oh yeah, you got everything you wanted handed to you on a silver platter and you're gorgeous and popular. Like, well, you know, I hate you.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I could definitely relate to that too in high school, of just sort of being like, you know, othered by people who didn't look like me and just being like, you know what? You suck. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
reflecting it back at them. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I think I've said this in an
Yeah.
episode before. I was definitely a pick-me girl in high school. Just like, I'm not like other girls, putting down other girls to make myself feel better, because that was like that's I don't know, kind of the thing we
That's what you
grew
do
up
when
in.
you hate yourself. Yeah, like
Yeah. Because you're unwilling
And we were
look in the mirror.
we were
and
taught
face.
that.
Yeah, and we were taught that too.
that as well.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I have like a handful of fun facts about Scar that I found on Disney Wikipedia on accident when I was looking up other things. So I would like to share these with y'all. And if you have any feedback or if anything comes to you while I'm sharing them, please interject. But I found out that Scar's song, which was written by Elton John and Tim Rice, was originally titled Thanks to Me and was performed after Mufasa's death. And then as the development of the story progressed, the filmmakers decided that the song was performed too late in the film, so they wanted to use his number as a build-up to the eventual takeover. So that's when they rewrote it and called it Be Prepared. And that's kind of him getting the hyenas on board and the plot to kill Mufasa. So I thought that was really fascinating because I can't imagine it the other way.
Mm-mm.
You know?
Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Another plot point that I'm very glad was deleted from the movie, and LB will just know why. But there's a deleted plot point that included Scar exiling Nala from the Pride because she ignored his romantic advances.
I saw that too.
Ew.
Yeah. Glad we took that out.
Yes. Oh god. I mean, they took it out, but they kept it in Aladdin.
The musical.
Between they do.
It's in the musical. I think so.
Oh, I haven't
Wait,
seen it yet.
Really?
Ew. Well, gross.
I saw it. Yeah, I saw it on Broadway. I don't remember, but maybe
not.
Attention.
Maybe not.
I also saw
I probably wasn't
that
paying
it was
attention.
it was still in the play, so.
Oh, okay.
Probably
Gross.
is, and I wasn't paying attention.
It's such a beautiful show. That's all you're just like,
I know.
everyone, that's so beautiful.
Literal tears soon as they start walking down the aisles. I was like, okay.
Oh my god.
It's on my
The
bucket
first
list.
note.
Cheers. Literally.
And then my last fun fact, if you know anything about me, you know that I love Alan Rickman. But Alan Rickman was once considered to play Scar along with Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen. But Jeremy Irons was approached for the role because he has a background in theater, and filmmakers were like, oh, we see him as a Shakespearean villain. Let's get like a theatrical performer for it. So
I can't imagine anyone else. Like, I love all of those other actors you listed, but Scar's voice, Jeremy Irons, is just, that's Scar. That's perfect.
I mean, it's iconic, right?
But
iconic, yeah.
If there
And
was anyone else, I can possibly see Alan Rickman. If there was anyone else, you know?
I'm kind of like, oh, someone do that edit. I know he has passed away, but I know there's a way to take
AI.
Snape's voice, and yeah.
We have the
I know
technology.
there's a way to make that happen. Please make that edit for us. That is everything from me. Yes.
Well, thank you for finding and sharing all of those fun facts. I didn't know any of that, actually. Really love that the Nala thing was taken out. Don't love that it's still in the musical, but maybe it actually makes sense. I don't know. And yeah.
Further assassinates his character. Like, we can add another
this is true.
element to it. Non-consent or whatever, yeah.
As if they needed more things to be like, hey, this guy's the bad guy, in case it wasn't clear. Yeah.
But you're right. They left it in Aladdin. Which one came out first?
That's a good question.
I don't remember.
I want to say Lion King came out first, and then Aladdin.
92.
Okay. Maybe they learned from their mistakes then. Yeah. They were like, oh, this didn't go over well. We're going to leave that out. Because, that was gross.
Yeah. Icky. Yeah.
Icky.
Does anybody have any, like, I know we didn't ask you for this, but does anybody have like any favorite moments or quotes from the movie that they'd like to share, whether related to or not related to Scar?
Gotta give me a second.
Sure. I'll share mine. One that kind of like, I haven't watched this movie in a very long time. And so I'm sitting here cracking up at all of these jokes, but the joke that got me the most was when Simba is trying to look for a distraction, and he looks at Timon and Pumbaa as they're going to be the distraction. And Timon says, what do you want me to do? Dress and drag and do the hula? And I never realized they actually said that, because then it's like obviously what he's doing, right? With the little dance. He's like, are you aching? That. And just like, just hearing the line, I was like, he says that?
It's so funny. Yeah, I didn't catch that until I was an adult, for sure. It's really, really funny. And also Nathan Lane is just hilarious to begin with. So that line on top of it is just so funny. I think for me, I love rewatching it today. I was like, wow, this animation, and I know that it's like super dated and old, but it is so beautiful. It's so good. It really, because sometimes you'll watch old animated things and you're like, oof, God, it's rough to look at. But this one, I'm like, wow, this is so good. And the music and God, the anime, it's just everything. Everything about this movie is still so beautiful to me. And I don't know, just a classic. It's a classic. I think it's a classic that kind of stands the test of time. Did we need a live action remake? No, but cool, we got one.
Yeah, no, I think it's one of those that's just so good from start to finish. Like, you can watch that movie straight through as many times and you never get tired of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think my favorite parts are like all the fun, like Timon and Pumbaa stuff. But, given the nature of my work and just, what I really care about, I do really like the quote from Rafiki saying, oh yes, the past can hurt, but from the way I see it, you can either run from it or learn from it. Like,
that's the one I was going to bring up. Yeah.
That's like, just so beautiful. And to teach kids that is pretty special.
And I think some adults, like I was talking about with my experience of kind of being the villain in a lot of people's stories and not being able to accept that is in the past and I can't change it, but I can learn from it. And I think that's why now I have done so much work to become the person that I am. And each new person that I meet or rekindle a relationship with, I just, the thought I just had right now was like, am I manipulating people into being like, I'm trying to put my best foot forward with them? But no, that's not it. And that's anxiety talking. Anyway, all of that to say, this is growth, this is change, and it takes time and it's tricky. And a lot of it is being uncomfortable with that nuance in the gray area. But yeah, great. One of the best quotes from that movie. Thank you for reminding us all about it. Bless you. Well, anyway.
I have one more quote that I would like to say, and it is Mufasa's quote where he says, "Being brave doesn't mean you go looking for trouble," which I really like, because I do feel like sometimes people see bravery as one specific thing. You can be brave without proving yourself, if that makes sense. You don't have to. Yeah.
I'm like, did the creator of Harry Potter just watch this movie and just think, okay, Scar is Slytherin and Simba is Gryffindor and Zazu is Ravenclaw, and Pumbaa is Hufflepuff. But it just seems like I was thinking about the green and black imagery with Scar's whole be prepared scene. And
but also like the animals that you were talking about, like Gryffindor is a lion, Ravenclaw is a bird,
That's very funny. But there is a lot of traditional design imagery around green and evil. So that is a design element thing that I have heard.
Yeah, the lime green is a very Disney villain iconic coloring.
Evil color. Yeah. And another thing, Marissa, that you said earlier about like moving forward from your past, like if we were analyzing Simba, I do really love that he says the line about like, I've moved on from that scar. Like he is no longer taking the shame of potentially being the reason that his father died. And he's choosing to move on and continue living his life despite that. And he has like overcome that adversity in a way, which I thought was a really cool moment as well.
Hakuna Matata.
Hakuna Matata.
Actually, my last question for y'all, and then I promise we'll wrap up, is do y'all see Hakuna Matata as a little bit toxic positivity? Maybe just like a smidgen?
I think that's the point, is it's like this very immature, like, see, you can just ignore your problems for the rest of your life and you'll be good. And then it's like, no, you can't. Sorry.
Is this why I have like an avoidant attachment style as an adult? Because this movie like formulated my childhood, and I'm like, let's just not worry about it and ignore it, and then it'll all work itself out in the end.
Very well could be.
It's better than Scar.
It's true.
Right. If you had to choose one.
Killing.
If I had to choose one, do I want to be avoidant or kill everybody? I'll go avoidant.
Yeah. I think Hakuna Matata is like a nice sentiment for like a moment when you're feeling like everything's going wrong. There's nothing you can do to make yourself feel better. Like Hakuna Matata is just like okay, all right, everything's gonna work itself out. Just like for a moment, just to like get yourself out of the spiral. But then hands have to go on deck at some point.
Yeah. I think I agree that on some level it works as far as like accepting that we're in this situation. There are things we can't change, can't control. So we can't worry really about that, but we find what's within our control and stick our hands in there. Yeah.
I'm actually glad they included Timon and Pumbaa in like the final battle too.
Oh,
like they kind of were living in their own little bubble of like Hakuna Matata, everything's good. We're just gonna eat the grubs. But they were like, oh, stuff's getting real.
Yeah.
We actually have to be a part of this. Yeah.
Yeah. And
I'm glad you said that.
Right side of history.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because like speaking of being brave, these are like two kind of outcasts who have just sort of isolated themselves from society as well in a way. And I know that they have their own origin story. Is that in Lion King 1.5 or something?
Yes.
But that's one of my favorite Disney movies. But
so funny,
I love that they are included in that final battle, because it's like they are just showing up. They're like, this is someone we love and we're going to show up for them and we're going to kick these hyenas' ass, even though they could rip us to shreds. Like, and Rafiki showing up with the little
heck yeah. We love the crazy uncle that's not related to the family at all.
We all have one.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you both for being on this episode. I love the conversations that we had, and I hope there were some nice takeaways and little nuggets for anyone listening. But before we wrap up, would you both like to share where people can find you online, the things you're working on, and yeah, just anything you want to share with the people?
Okay, yeah. So it's Courtney Bree speaking for the non-visual listeners. You can find me on Instagram. I'm Coco Bree Cosplay. On everything else, I'm Coco Bree. I also teach editing classes. So if you want to learn VFX or how to use CapCut, edit on your phone, I'm your girl, CourtneyBree.com. And yeah, I'm just going to continue cosplaying. I'm always painting myself into somebody new. It's a fun time. So hope to see y'all over there.
Yay.
Very good.
Yeah, I'm at Blooming with Emmy on Instagram and TikTok, and my website is emmymarie.com. So if you're ever looking for some kind of trauma-informed support, that is available. So yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Yay.
Thanks for having me, y'all. This was fun.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Mental Health Multiverse. You can follow us on TikTok and Instagram at mhm.thepodcast.
And join our Patreon for as little as $3 for bonus and additional content.
You can follow both of us on Instagram and TikTok, HB at Heather Bodie.
And me, Marissa/LB at littleben_notbroken. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to share it with a friend.
Screenshot it and tag us on Instagram or leave us a rating or review.
Thanks again, and we'll talk to you again soon.